Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Let us begin our fourth day of the fifth meeting of Conference of the Parties to the Minamata Convention. In order to orient us for today, I would like to begin with an outline of the plan for today. So first, I would like to invite the co-chairs of the three contact groups on Annexes A and B, on Mercury waste thresholds and on budget, to update us on the work and progress of their group. Then I will invite the facilitator of Friends of the President groups on the effectiveness evaluation to do the same. Then I will call on Cyril Eugene Saint-Romain, Chair of the Credential Committee, to read the report on the credentials. Then we will reopen into the substantive items for today, namely item 4.0, Mercury and Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, item 4K, Effectiveness Evaluation, and item 4C, Artisanal and Small-Scale Gold Mining, and in the end, we will close the plenary with item 5, Trade. I trust this overview of the morning session is clear to you, and in the afternoon we will continue with consideration of substantive agenda items that we are not able to conclude in the morning. But before I proceed to call the co-chairs, may I ask the Secretariat to let us know of any housekeeping information.
Thank you. Good morning. CRP 7 on artisanal and small-scale gold mining is available in the in-session documents page on the password-protected area of the COP5 website. Also available in the contact group area of the site is the output from the Friends of President on national reporting.
Thank you very much. I now invite the co-chairs of the contact group on Annexes A and B to report on the work of the group and the progress made. Tsuki Kuroda, you have the floor. Japan.
Thank you very much, Madam President. The contact group on Annex A and B met twice from 10:30 to 1:30, and then from 7 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. Firstly, I would like to express our sincere gratitude to the parties who participated in the group. We are given a strict mandate that requests to end all of our work by the end of yesterday due to the document processing. Therefore, the work had to progress rather faster than we would have liked. However, throughout the discussion, the party made constructive and very helpful intervention. With that, I am pleased to report the following. In particular, as regards Part 1 of Annex A, it reached consensus on phase-out dates for 2 of the categories deferred from COP4. Agreement on the remaining 2 is deferred, pending advice from one party. Of the 6 categories of mercury added product proposed at this COP for inclusion in Part 1 of Annex A, 5 are successfully recommended for listing along with their phase-out date. The group then considered the 2 proposed amendments of Part 2 of Annex 2. The group recognized the importance of the measures that were proposed in relation to cosmetics and considered that a preferable approach could be to mandate the Secretariat to undertake the survey and provide a report for the consideration at next COP. The group accepted the offer of one party to further develop this proposal. Unfortunately, we did not have time for the consideration of the dental amalgam proposal for amendment of Part 2 of Annex A, along with the phase-out date. We co-chair reported yesterday on the agreement to recommend the inclusion of the manufacture of polyurethane using mercury-based catalyst in Part 1 of Annex B, as well as the COP to establish that the mercury-free processes for sodium or potassium methylate or ethylate have become technically and economically feasible. With that, the group have prepared a draft decision for the consideration at the plenary that reflects the outcome of such deliberation. And this has been submitted to the Secretariat for processing. It will be issued as a CLP with only a few issues outstanding. In addition, there are several CLPs either already submitted or in development. One of the CLPs submitted by 2 parties proposing a report for COP6 on alternatives to mercury-based catalyst in vinyl chloride monomer production was considered by the group and will be submitted to plenary for decision. Another CLP in relation to mercury-added cosmetics is in development and will be available for consideration by the group today. Accordingly, while the group has completed a large part of its mandate and can provide the plenary with a solid basis for discussion, it will need some time to finalize the outstanding issues that we believe we can make a solid progress. We are in your hands as to when we could reconvene to complete this work. Thank you, Madam President, and also thank you very much again, dear colleagues.
Thank you very much, Co-Chair, for your report, and I welcome the progress you made during the debate yesterday. And I note that the group needs to consider the draft decision on cosmetics that was developed overnight, and accordingly, I will assign 1 hour this morning from 10:30 to 11:30 in the same room A, with the priority for the group to finalize this issue in order to allow it to be submitted for processing. Now, I would like to invite the co-chair of the contact group on Mercury Oh, sorry, I saw Norway. Please, Norway.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you also to the co-chairs of this group for excellent work. We heard that they had not had enough time, if I understood correctly, to discuss dental amalgam. And now I hear that you are assigning only 1 hour. And I just wonder whether there is perhaps space for more than that today. Thank you.
Thank you, Norway. Well, the best I can do is to allow them to work this morning from 10:30 until 12. So 1 hour and a half. I have on my list Zambia. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair, and good morning, colleagues. I had a similar question as my colleague from Norway has just asked, because we note that there hasn't been much work done on amalgam. So just wondering whether it's possible to allocate more time, because the issue of dental amalgam is very important to our region, and it was a submission made by our region. So I'm asking your indulgence, Madam President, if more time could be allocated. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zambia. US, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Just to express our appreciation for you offering more time to this group. We also do agree that there is quite a bit of work to do, and we look forward to working as quickly as possible with our co-chairs, and appreciate the intervention from Zambia and Norway. Thank you. Thank you for your assistance.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much for your patience. I needed some coordination with the Secretariat because there are some deadlines that we have to have in mind. So I am ready to give 2 hours to this group. So from 10:30 to 12:30. There is a deadline at 1 that needs to be considered. So The group may start the debate starting 10:30 till 12:30. Thank you for understanding. And there is a condition, of course, just to keep me updated on a regular basis about the progress, just to have a clear picture about how the flow in the room is. And yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for this. Argentina?
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor, and many thanks for extending the time for the contact group. I wanted to ask whether this affects only if that affects the group on thresholds, because we do understand that there's little time, but we're wondering whether we couldn't also run this in parallel to the other contact groups. That would be ideal for us as well. Thank you.
Well, I made a promise Monday that I will not try to have more than 2 contact groups in the same time, and also never more than 1 contact group and plenary session. So we will try to adjust the other time slots just to be agreeable for everybody, and the delegation can participate in any contact groups. Thank you. Excellent. Let's move on now to the co-chairs of the contact group on mercury waste thresholds to report on the work of the group and the progress made. I invite the co-chair. Zaigam, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and good morning, colleagues. The contact group on mercury waste threshold met yesterday from 3 to 7 p.m. The group worked diligently and made a considerable progress. However, I regret to say that there was some setback on the threshold value. We also opened our meeting with some very good progress when 2 parties removed their option to not establish a threshold, but rather to continue to assess further scientific information. After that good start, the group discussed many of the elements of a COP decision on mercury waste threshold based on some views from the co-chairs and found a common ground for the most of these elements, including the transmission of the decision to the relevant bodies of the Basel Convention and on the capacity building. We had 2 small group discussions, one to work on the legal clarity with regard to the transboundary movement of mercury waste, and the other to discuss the process for developing requirements for environmentally sound management of mercury waste pursuant to Article 11(3)(a). We had an extremely constructive and productive discussion on those. However, the setback was about the threshold value and the alternate approach. The options for the threshold value have been narrowed to 10 and 15 milligram per kg, but in relation to seeking compromise solution, the matter of alternative approach, which had been agreed by the almost every party as an instrumental element for establishing a threshold value, was unfortunately reopened. Ms. Carissa, my co-chair, and I are prepared to facilitate the finalization of this issue and clean up the decision on the issues that our group has worked so cooperatively to reach. We also prepared a comparative table of original draft decision and proposed text in the light of discussion during last 2 sessions, which will be available for contact group. However, if we are unable to open the discussion with agreement on the current text of the alternative, then it will not be possible to go forward with the threshold. On behalf of the group, I call for further cooperative spirit in order to complete the task. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much for your report. Indeed, I understand that you have also progressed. However, seems like you faced a considerable challenge for establishing the waste threshold on which COP has been working for such a long time already. So I request the contact group to work this morning from 12:30 to 14:30 to 2:30 p.m. And I expect that you can conclude the work at this morning meeting and send the draft decision to be processed as a CRP. I'm going to repeat the time, so it's 12:30 until 2:30, 2 hours. We really, I mean, it's mandatory and everybody knows that we really must establish the threshold at this COP, here. Or we will not be able to do so forever. I'm just going to take a look to the co-chairs. It's agreeable with you, the time's excellent. Thank you very much for your work and thank the participants for their constructive debates. Okay, now we move on to the co-chairs of the group, contact group on budget to report on the work of the group and the progress made. I have Costa Rica, you have the floor.
Gracias, señora Presidenta.
Thank you, Madam President, and a very good morning to you.
So on behalf of my co-chair, the contact group on program of work and budget met twice yesterday from 1 to 3 and from 6 to 7:20 p.m. We were able to clear the decisions already approved in plenary. We also did the second reading on the draft decision text, and we are happy to inform the decision was finished and given to the Secretariat for translation. After this, we continue with the second reading of the program of work activities in which still need further consideration on 3 outstanding issues: staff management, the effectiveness evaluation, and capacity building. The co-chairs really appreciate the constructive spirit of collaboration in the contact group. As it was done yesterday, the Secretariat uploaded the final version of the decision text and the current version of the program of work activities for 2024 and 2025 on the COP's intranet site. For today, our goal is to undertake the standard program of work activities, which are, as I mentioned before, are capacity building, staff cost, and effectiveness evaluation. Also, as needed, clear any decision from the budgetary perspective if received from other contact groups of plenary. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Maria. Thank you very much, Premzil, for your hard work and the participants in your group. I request you to continue the work, and you'll have a time slot today between 1 and 5 p.m. And I think you know that the aim is to finalize it, if it's possible. Thank you so much for this. And now, I would like to invite the facilitator of the Friends of the President Group on Effectiveness Evaluation to report on the work of the group and the progress made. Leroy, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President. The Friends of the President met from 1:30 to 2:30 yesterday afternoon. And we continued our discussions where we left off the day prior, where, based on the constructive spirit within the room, we commenced our discussions around the membership of 5 persons per region. We, of course, recognize the great degree of compromise that existed on both sides, where we started at 3 and 8 membership, and much discussion was centered around how this could be done in the best way possible, noting, of course, the implications for modalities and budget. So following these consultations and noting the flexibility and willingness to compromise, the Friends agreed to the membership of 5 per region. And this agreement, with the understanding that the meetings of the EEG in the upcoming period will be subject to the availability of funds, and that with the experience of the EEG, including its membership, will be reviewed at the end of the first evaluation period cycle, which is at the end of COP7. So we thank everyone who would have participated in the discussion. We certainly recognize how tough it was to reach such an agreement, but I wish to express gratitude to parties for their spirit of compromise, and that was born out of a greater need to not delay the work of the EEG. I'm pleased to report that the work of the group has been completed, and I wish to thank the Secretariat for their valued support, and to you, Madam President, for providing the opportunity to resolve this very important issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leroy. This is indeed a very good news. And I thank you as a facilitator and the participating parties for completing your task efficiently and in a timely manner. Congratulations from my side. Thank you very much. Excellent. So with this in mind, I would like to remind you that a lot of progress have been achieved already, and we need to keep the piece of work. So before proceeding to the next item on the agenda, I would like to ask the Secretariat to inform on the rooms for the contact groups. Secretariat?
Thank you. The contact group on Annexes A and B will meet from 10:30 to 12:30 in room A. The contact group on waste thresholds will meet from 12:30 to 14:30 in room A. For the program of work and budget, we have a room change. The contact group on program of work and budget will meet from 1300 to 1700 in room C. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretariat. Okay, we now are in the moment when we need to reopen the agenda item 2.3, credentials. I now invite the meeting to resume its consideration of agenda item 2D, and you will recall that this agenda item was considered actually Monday, on the first day of the meeting. At the time, the meeting agreed on the process, schedule, and approach for the preparation of the report on the credentials of representatives. You will also recall that the Bureau constituting the Credentials Committee agreed to monitor the submission of credentials, which were due by 31st of October, and to present the plenary today, Tuesday, 2nd of November, its report on credentials. COP5 will subsequently be invited to consider adoption of the report on credentials. Now, I would like to invite Ms. Cheryl Eugene Sandromain, the chair of the Credentials Committee, to read the report on this matter. Cheryl, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Good day, fellow colleagues. The representatives of 115 parties have been registered to participate in the 5th meeting of the Conference of the Parties of the Minamata Convention on Mercury in Geneva, Switzerland, and are present at the current meeting. In total, 105 parties submitted credentials of the respective representatives, which were issued by the head of state or government or the Minister for Foreign Affairs, and were therefore found to be in order. 94 of these credentials were originals, while 11 were copies which were accepted with the understanding that originals will be submitted as soon as possible. The following 10 parties did not submit credentials for their representatives: Cameroon, Chad, Comoros, the Republic of Congo, Guinea, Iraq, Mali, Mauritania, Paraguay, and Vanuatu. These 10 parties are therefore participating as observers in the 5th meeting of the Conference of the Parties of the Minamata Convention on Mercury and will be recorded as such in the report of the meeting and the list of participants. I thank you.
Thank you very much. I now invite the Conference of the Parties to proceed at this time with the adoption of the report on the credentials of representatives to the 5th meeting of the Conference of the Parties as presented by the Chair of the Credentials Committee. Are there any objections to the adoption of the report on the credentials of representatives to the 5th meeting of the Conference of the Party? I see two parties requesting the floor. I will start with Iraq and then Mauritania. Iraq, you have the floor.
السلام عليكم سيدة الرئيسة أرجو يعني إيضاح حول
Good morning, Madam President. Well, with respect to this item, as you would be aware, our minister, you would be aware that this document needs to be signed by minister or deputy foreign minister of our country. And because of the very busy schedule of the minister, that hasn't been possible so far. So I'm going to ask the Secretary to accept that Iraq could take part in voting, but if we don't receive the credentials, assigned credentials before the end of the conference, that you would consider us as an observer. But give us a little bit more time, because we are doing everything we can to get the assigned credentials as soon as possible. But unfortunately, our Minister of Foreign Affairs is busy elsewhere and is not in a position to sign the credentials. So I'm asking for flexibility on the part of the Secretary, and we would forward the document as soon as we get it. Could we delay the vote on this point, please, before we can receive the signed document? Otherwise, if we don't receive that document at all, you could consider us as observers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Iraq. Mauritania.
لا تقطع. Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I just wanted to point out that the Mauritanian credentials are ready, but they are being sent in all urgency from our country. I hope that they will arrive before the end of the conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mauritania. With respect to the two parties that presented their motives of not submitting credentials yet, I will propose the following. We can adopt the report now if the valid credentials arrive before the end of the meeting, and if we will still have time to inform the plenary and include this in the final report. Okay, I see no objections. so I can conclude that the report is adopted. Thank you very much. Okay, please let's turn now to the agenda item 4.0 on Mercury and the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. If you recall, we had one outstanding matter related to paragraph 3 of the draft decision. May I please now ask the US delegation to update the plenary on this matter? You have the floor, US.
Thank you, Madam President. The United States would like to remove the brackets around the original paragraph 3, and thanks you for your indulgence for our need for consultation. Thanks, bye.
Thank you very much for this, United States. With this matter resolved, I now propose that we adopt the decision pending a review by the Program of Work and Budget Contact Group of any budgetary implications not yet foreseen in the budget for 2024-2025. Are there any objections to my proposal? I have China on my list. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam President. The parties to the CBD carried out long negotiations for a monitoring framework for the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, and ad hoc technical expert group has also done a lot of work. We appreciate their great efforts. We also noted that the framework target 7 clearly provides reducing the overall risk from pesticides and highly hazardous chemicals by at least half. And the component indicator of monitoring framework target 7 also contains proportion of domestic and industrial wastewater flow safely treated, and the other complementary indicator also contains municipal solid waste collected and managed and hazardous waste generation. In sum, hazardous chemicals are already dealt with in the framework. In Annex 1 to Decision 15/5 on the monitoring framework, it is also mentioned that in order to maximize uptake and minimizing the reporting burden, the list of headline indicators comprises a small number of indicators which are intended to capture the overall scope of a goal or target in the Kunming Montreal framework. So we believe that the monitoring framework currently covers all elements having a significant impact on biodiversity and balances the concerns of the parties to the CBD. Considering that most of the Minamata Convention delegates do not participate in the CBD negotiations and have limited knowledge of the CBD arrangements, and so we doubt the appropriateness of the Minamata Convention to submit work requests directly to the CBD. In view of the above, we propose to delete the relevant language in paragraph 5. Thank you.
Thank you very much, China. Are there any comments or objections to China's proposal? EU, you have the floor.
Buenos días.
Good morning. The EU and its member states would like to point out that we are inviting the CBD COP to consider proposals for indicators, and therefore we will maintain the position that we took yesterday. Thank you.
Thank you, you. Canada.
Thank you, Madam President. Canada would also like to point out the very good report of the secretariats of the BRS and Minamata conventions on the implications for the chemicals covered by these conventions, including mercury, on biodiversity. So we believe that there may be an element lacking there in the current approach of the Convention on Biodiversity. And with respect to our Chinese colleagues, we have been consulting with our national CBD colleagues who are responsible for this, and they recognize that there may be some gaps there and some other chemicals. And I think that's why the Target 7 specifically mentions the pollution from all sources, and then specifically lays out some of these other things like pesticides and nutrients and plastics. But there is certainly a recognition that other pollutants, such as mercury and other highly hazardous chemicals, do have an impact on biodiversity. And so we believe there is potentially the need to retain that paragraph with the invitation to the CBD COP. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Canada. Yes, China, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, President. We fully appreciate our distinguished colleagues from EU and Canada. And China suggested we would like to suggest the word of paragraph 5 would change to inform the conference of the parties to the Convention on Biological and Diversity about the suggestion to consider the additional indicator of highly hazardous chemical and mercury.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the China's proposal? EU, please.
Thank you very much, Madam President. We would like to see the proposal made by China on screen, if possible, please. Thank you.
Before trying to project this, the proposal from China was to delete invites and replace with informs. In the first, just let me take this. Informs the conference of the party to the Convention on Biological Diversity, and the only change is to the verb. China, can I ask you just to clarify, because it might be a misunderstanding. So would you please read out your proposal?
Thank you, Chair. Informs the Conference of the Parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity about the suggestion to consider additional indicators of highly hazardous chemical and mercury.
Having heard that, is that clear now to the parties? What proposal? Okay, thank you for your patience. Now you have the text on the screen, and I will ask the Secretariat to introduce the changes, please.
Thank you, Madam President. On the third line, my understanding, based on the intervention by China, is that the word invites would be replaced by inform. There should be square brackets around invites, but I missed that. So it would be inform the Conference of the Parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity about the suggestion to consider additional indicators under Target 7 and so on.
Thank you, Secretariat. I see China. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Would you like to delete the sentence before inform?
Not clear. Which one?
Notes the absence, from notes the absence to the invites. The sentence starts from informs.
Could you please repeat? I'm not.
The sentence starts from informs the Conference of the Party and delete the words about this.
Okay, thank you, China. Secretariat, could you please?
My understanding, if perhaps the Secretariat could also reflect on the screen, is that the entire first part of the paragraph would be deleted, and those would be the words notes the absence of the monitoring framework, notes the absence in the monitoring framework for the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework of indicators against which progress towards reducing the overall risk from highly hazardous chemicals could be measured, and invites. What would remain would be inform the Conference of the Parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity about the suggestion to consider additional indicators under Target 7 to cover highly hazardous chemicals and mercury. Thank you.
This reflects your proposal, China? Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Canada is not comfortable with deleting the text in blue. This is because it's very important to draw attention to the fact that we need to have indicators for highly hazardous chemicals within this biodiversity framework. The framework currently does not have much focus on chemicals, and so we want to ensure that it remains top of mind that these indicators are needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Canada. Australia, please.
Thank you, Madam President. Australia would just like to support the comments from our delegates in Canada.
Thank you very much, Australia. I see China followed by EU.
Thank you, Chair. In order to not waste the time of our colleagues, we need to consult the domestic advice and opinions. So we need more time. Thank you.
Thank you, China. EU.
Thank you, Madam President. We would like to ask China, what is the problem they find in having one COP inviting another COP to review proposals for additional indicators? Our understanding is that the language that is that was proposed initially was clearer because it provides a contextual framework for the need to have indicators, as Canada said, and as Australia supported them. And we think that in this way, the text was much clearer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, you. Now I would like to go back to China, and having in mind the latest comments, can you still maintain your proposal? And if yes, can you please tell me how much time do you think you need for a feedback?
Thank you, Madam President. Right now, we do not have a definitive answer. However, we still retain our previous position. Colleagues, thank you for your comments. We will also transmit your comments to our domestic colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Chile.
Muchas gracias. Thank you very much, Madam President. Perhaps it could also be that our neighbors from China will check whether if they put the first sentence at the end, the paragraph could be agreeable to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Chile. Okay, so in order to move on, I have a request to China just to take into consideration all the comments made by the other parties, consult, and please come back to me at the latest end of lunchtime. Thank you. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President.
Okay, thank you very much. Now I think it's time to move on and reopen agenda item 4K on effectiveness evaluation to consider a decision on the matter. You'll recall that based on interventions made in plenary when the agenda item was first considered, I established Friends of President group to reach agreement on the matter. We just listed the positive news. We just listed the positive news from the facilitator of the Friends of the President, and I also consulted with parties on the indicators, and there was general agreement that the indicators could be adopted as they currently appear in Addendum 1 of Document 16. I would like to again thank all parties who have demonstrated great flexibility and spirit of compromise to come together on this important matter. Now, I propose that COP adopts a decision as contained in the annex to Working Document 16 with the following amendments to be read out by the Secretariat and pending confirmation from the Budget Contact Group that any budgetary implications have been accommodated in the budget for 2024-2025. Secretariat, please.
Thank you, Madam President. I will turn to the Annex 1 of Document 16 that contains a very short draft decision. and to paragraph 1 of that draft decision, where the square brackets stood in the draft decision, that would be replaced by the word 7th. And that would be the only change in the draft decision, except for editorial changes to make the current footnotes as annexes to the decision. But that's purely editorial, and it's mentioned already in the footnote. So again, the only substantive change in the draft decision would be in paragraph 1. The square brackets that were there as placeholders would be replaced by the word 7th. The entire paragraph would read, agrees to consider the outcome of the first effectiveness evaluation of the convention at its 7th meeting. And moving on the annex to the same document, on the terms of reference of the effectiveness evaluation group, section C on the membership, paragraph 8, there were also some square brackets. There were 2 sets of square brackets, one on the first line and another one in the second line. The first set of square brackets would be replaced by 25. The second set of square brackets would be replaced by 5. And I will read, the entire paragraph would read, the effectiveness evaluation group will consist of 25 participants from parties, comprising 5 representatives of parties from each of the 5 United Nations regions nominated by the region. Again, I will repeat, the effectiveness evaluation group will consist of 25 participants from parties, comprising 5 representatives of parties from each of the 5 United Nations regions nominated by the region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretariat. Are there any objections to adopting the decision as orally amended? I see no request for the floor, so it is decided. Thank you very much. And with this, we complete the consideration of the agenda item 4K. Now, let's move on to the agenda item 4C on artisanal and small-scale gold mining. If you recall, during the 3rd plenary session, I asked the Secretariat to consult with parties to prepare a CRP and adjourn the matter. As announced by the Secretariat at the beginning of this session, CRP 7 has been posted in the in-session document page earlier this morning. I propose that we adopt the decision on artisanal and small-scale gold mining as contained in CRP 7, and pending a review of the program of work and budget, of any budgetary implication not yet foreseen in the budget for 2024-2025. Are there any objections? I see Iran, you have the floor.
Sorry, Madam. My comments is not about this. Item is the previous one, and I put my flag, but you didn't see me. Anyway, just I have a comments on the previous agenda that you, agreed on it. As I want a comment that I wanted to deliver it now.
So, yes, you may present your comment, and before that, I would like to thank you for your flexibility. But just keep in mind that the decision is adopted. But you can present your comment. You have the floor. Yeah, Iran, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Despite all the challenges, Iran has continuously declared its adherence to the provision of the Minamata Convention. In this way, my delegation and I think all of us agreed that the effectiveness evaluation process has paramount importance in achieving the objective of the convention. Our concern to have a comprehensive effectiveness evaluation group comprised of as many participants as possible also comes out of this spirit, as we are trying to answer the big question of whether the convention has been effective or not. Having said that, in the spirit of cooperation and as we consider the consensus principle as a very precious legacy, our delegation showed its maximum flexibility regarding the matter, and we are glad that we are together could reach notable progress on the formation of the effectiveness evaluation group at this COP. We are looking forward to meeting the achievement of the effectiveness evaluation process in the next conference of the parties. In the end, our delegation would like to thank the facilitator and other parties who had an active engagement and helped the convention to make a step forward together. I thank you, Madam.
I thank you also, Iran, and let's give another round of applause for this success. Thank you very much. Oh, this is so weird to hear my voice in the headset. Okay, so moving on, I was proposing you that we adopt the decision on artisanal and small-scale gold mining as contained in CRP 7, and pending a review of the program of work and budget of any budgetary implication not yet foreseen in the budget of 2024-2025. And I'm going to ask again if there are any objections related to my proposal. I don't have any request for the floor. It is so decided. Thank you very much. I'm just going to ask for indulgence for 5 minutes before we move to the next item on the agenda. Thank you very much for your patience. Now, let us reopen agenda item 4A on Mercury supply sources and trade. We considered this agenda item on Tuesday in the afternoon. During the session, the draft decision contained in document 3 was introduced by the Secretariat and CRP2 on a study of the global supply, trade, and use of mercury compounds submitted by governments of Australia, Canada, Chile, and United States of America was introduced. Regarding CRP2, on Tuesday, I encouraged the parties who had comments to send them directly to the proponents of CRP2, and also to consult with them and come back to me. I have been informed that consultations have been finalized, and I would like to invite Canada to inform us on the outcome. Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. So we were able to engage in very collaborative discussions, and were able to make some helpful changes to the CRP. So I'm not sure if you can project this on the screen. Perfect, thank you. And I do also want to note that the CRP is now co-sponsored by all of GRULAC, not just Chile. And so you will see the changes that we've made here. They're minor, and they're to provide more clarification as to what is going to be studied and also the needs for the study. So you will see that we have added production as one of the types of information to be included, and also the text recognizing the benefits of a report containing this information, and the text noting that such information is not included in parties' national reports, and also text to provide clarification on the report by the Natural Resources Defense Council. So the additional text here reads, which provides recommendations on the available sources of data on global mercury compound production and trade. And finally, under sub-bullet A, we have included production here to reflect the change that we have made in the chapeau of this draft decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Canada. Yes, please come back.
My apologies, I forgot. We have also added a footnote, if you will scroll down to the bottom. So we just wanted to clarify that this work is intended to study mercury compounds that may be used in products or processes, or that can be converted to elemental mercury. And it's not intended to cover mercury compounds which fall under the definition of mercury waste as per Article 11, paragraph 2. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, with this presentation in mind, I have on my list Saudi Arabia. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. The delegation of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia should like to thank all the states that have studied, considered CRP2, and introduced all the proposals and amendments that were accepted and contained in this document, and therefore we recommend the adoption. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Saudi Arabia. I don't have any other request for the floor. So I propose Japan. You have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to know how the proposal is dealt with, which is Colombia colleagues suggested on mercury separate sources in the trading, including clearinghouse mechanism. I'm wondering if it was proposed to add the draft decision. And we are interested in hearing Colombia colleagues' perspectives again on the proposal. As an intention behind the establishment of the clearinghouse remains unclear, we are eager to understand their viewpoints on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Japan, for your comment. Just to let you know that your comment is on a different document. So now we are discussing about the adoption of CRP2, and your comment was made on the decision contained in document 3. So if this provides you clarity to your comment, okay? So it's good. Excellent. I still have Cambodia on my list. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. And Cambodia would like to thank the delegates that proposed this decision. So Cambodia actually support this decision, but as the Canada delegation have added one word in the production, so Cambodia would like seek, if possible, to add the productions in the title of the decision, reading study of the global supply, production, trade, and use of the mercury compound. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Cambodia. I see Canada. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to thank Cambodia for their very helpful suggestion. Yes, that was an omission on our part as the result of lack of sleep and lack of food. Okay.
So my understanding is that you agree with Cambodia and we add production in the title. Is this now the final version? Agreeable with everybody and accommodating all the comments? Excellent. So I will try one more time. After Mexico has the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Mexico welcomes this draft decision. And it also could include the production of mercury, because we did deal in this conference with ASGM, but we didn't say much about the production of elemental mercury. From Mexico's perspective, we have already undertaken several efforts to phase out mining that leads to release. And so we would promote studies that will look into all the sources of trade, production, and supply of mercury. And we are grateful to parties to consider this issue as part of this decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mexico. Canada, please.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Mexico, for their comments. We would like to point out that information on the production of elemental mercury is something that should already be covered under the report on trade supply and demand of mercury that is being produced for the effectiveness evaluation. And in fact, there are questions already on elemental mercury that are contained within the national reporting format. So what we are trying to put forward here is to gather information specifically on mercury compounds, because Article 3 right now does not actually require any trade requirements for mercury compounds, and yet it is contained within paragraph 13 of Article 3 that the COP shall evaluate whether the trade of mercury compounds compromises the objective of this convention. So in this CRP, we are trying to give life to the requirement in paragraph 13 of Article 3, which is specific to mercury compounds. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Canada. So Mexico, with this comment in mind, do you agree that? Okay.
Thank you very much, Madam President, and many thanks to the delegation of Canada for that clarification. We know that the draft decision does make reference to mercury compounds. As far as we are concerned, it's important to now also mention a reference to elemental mercury, because even though it is included in the national reports that are submitted by parties, we could also recognize that we're also talking about elemental mercury, which we think should be included in this draft decision in view of the importance that it has for some parties, plus its critical importance in ASGM in other regions of the world. And for that reason, we would like to submit it for the consideration of parties. Thank you.
Okay, just in order to be fair with all parties, I would like to give you 20 minutes for bilateral consultation, and then we come back with a definitive proposal. So you have time until 12:05, 5 minutes past 12. Thank you very much for understanding. I have Mexico on my list. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Thank you for giving me the floor. I did want to say that we are looking into options to include elemental mercury in one of the paragraphs that might come up for discussion this afternoon. So we would agree with the decision as it was just presented. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mexico. Okay, so the third try is that I'm proposing you to adopt a decision on a study of the global supply, trade, and use of mercury compounds contained in CRP2 with the changes just discussed and pending a review of the program of work and budget of any budgetary implications not yet foreseen for the budget for 2024-2025. Are there any objections to my proposal? I don't see any requests for the floor. It is so decided. Thank you very much. Now, regarding the draft decision on supply sources and trade contained in document 3, on Tuesday I requested Australia, Colombia, the United States and other parties who had commented in plenary on Tuesday to submit their comments in writing to allow me to prepare a CRP, of course with the support of the Secretariat. I have already received some comments. I request parties to make all efforts necessary to have consolidated input provided to the Secretariat as soon as possible so we can advance and finalize this item. Thank you very much. And with this, I say that we have exhausted our agenda item for the morning session. I thank you all for your hard work so far. And just to let you know that we are almost there, very close. Before I adjourn, let me check with China if you had time already to consult. I was asking China if you had time already to consult or you need me to let you... Yes, China, you have the floor.
谢谢主席，我们刚。
Thank you, Madam President. We have consulted with the colleagues of Canada and the EU. I think the colleague of the EU will present our views. Thank you.
Thank you, China. I see Australia. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Co-President. Oh, Madam President, sorry, coming out of contact groups. I just wanted to check, I'm not sure if there was a case of mistaken identity if China was asking Australia to take the floor in relation to the biodiversity item.
Seems that you are right.
Great, not a problem, thank you. So I would just like to thank my colleagues from China and Canada. We've had some excellent discussions just in the last couple of minutes, and I think we've perhaps come up with some compromise text for paragraph 5 that we would be happy to present now if you're comfortable with that for people to consider. If we could bring it up on the screen, I think that might be helpful and we can just edit. Thank you. Are you happy for me to just dictate the amendments? So I'll read it out in full and then I'm happy to come back as needed. So we have notes the absence in the monitoring framework for the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework of indicators regarding the overall risk from highly hazardous chemicals, and invites the Conference of the Parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity to consider additional indicators, under Target 7, to cover highly hazardous chemicals and mercury, full stop.
Thank you very much, Australia. Now, if you like to go again slowly, just to allow the Secretariat to actually update. So you have the floor.
Is it? Oh, it's on. Sorry. Thank you. So starting again, notes the absence in the monitoring framework for the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework of indicators regarding the overall risk from highly hazardous chemicals, and invites the Conference of the Parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity to consider additional indicators, under Target 7, to cover highly hazardous chemicals and mercury. Thank you. And I might just ask if I could check with my colleagues from China and Canada if I've accurately reflected our conversations. Thank you.
China, you have the floor.
好，谢谢。Thank you, Madam President. China thanks Australia and Canada for their flexibility. We also had friendly consultation. We now support the current revision. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I would like to ask the Secretariat to read again the whole paragraph with the changes proposed. Please.
Thank you, Madam President. The paragraph would read, notes the absence in the monitoring framework for the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework of indicators regarding the overall risk from highly hazardous chemicals, and invites the Conference of the Parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity to consider additional indicators under Target 7 to cover highly hazardous chemicals and mercury.
Thank you very much, Secretariat. So now, I would like to propose you to adopt this document. I see no request for the floor and no objections in the room. So it is so decided. Thank you very much. That is fantastic. Okay, so this was actually the last outstanding matter preventing the adoption of the decision. So it was decided already. And I can propose you now that in the afternoon we continue with the agenda item 4A on supply sources and trade, and then we can reopen agenda item 4J on national reporting. And to give you a good news, I adjourn this session until 4 p.m. Thank you very much. And before that, I see US. Sorry, you have the floor, US.
Thank you, Madam President, and I hope you'll forgive me for coming in at the last moment, but I hope that the good news I give you will help with that. Our delegation has consulted with our colleagues from Colombia and Japan, and we have agreed on the way forward on the text of the draft decision under agenda item 4A, and we have sent, my delegation has sent that text into the Secretariat. Thank you.
That is in good news. Thank you very much for that. So again, Chile, I give the floor to you.
Thank you. Can the Secretary remind us the contact groups that are going to meet at lunchtime and right after, before plenary begins at 4?
Sure. I see Japan, you have the floor.
I just want to say thank you for U.S. colleagues to think about the Colombian proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Japan. So you have the contact groups, rooms, and time slots. And I adjourned the meeting until 4 p.m. Thank you very much for this morning. It was very productive. Thank you one more time.